Hello and welcome to Views on News. I'm Jawad Tehami. Now the conflict between Israel and Iran has entered the fourth day, and the death toll so far on both the sides in Israel's unilateral strikes on Friday in Iran, and later on the retaliatory strikes on the part of Iranians on the strategic sides in Israel has risen to 250 right after this Israeli unilateral action against the Iran, in which it targeted the military sites and also the civilian population, as well as that led to the killing of some top military commanders as well as the nuclear scientists in Iran. We've seen the world leaders condemning Israeli actions against the international law, against the UN Charter, in violation and in breach of Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We've also seen Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying we will hit every site and every target of the Ayatollah's regime, and what they have felt so far is nothing compared with what they will be handed in the coming days. Also, Israeli side has defined their strikes of being preventive in nature, also saying they won't let Iran to have the nuclear weapons. We've also seen there was a meeting at the United Nations Security Council. We've also seen the Under Secretary General at the for Political Affairs at the United Nations Security Council saying, I reaffirm the Secretary General's condemnation of any military escalation in the Middle East, also urging both the sides, Iran and Israel, to exercise maximum restraint and avoid all costs descent into deeper and wider regional conflict. We've also seen the statement at that particular point in time on the from the Iranian side saying, we strongly and unequivocally condemn the barbaric and criminal attack, a series of targeted assassinations against senior military officials, nuclear scientists, and innocent civilians. The Iranian envoy at the United Nations Security Council meeting went on to say that the Israel's attacks on protected nuclear facilities defied not only the fundamental principles of international law, but also the common conscience, warning that the damage to such sites could release catastrophic radiological consequences across the region and beyond. We saw the Russian envoy at that particular meeting alluded to this particular thing, that this particular crisis is because of the policies of the Western members of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. On the other side, we have seen US President Donald Trump saying that the US was not involved in this particular unilateral strike of Israel in Iran. We have also seen the State Department releasing a statement urging its embassies and consulates to tell the world that the US is not involved in Israel's unilateral action against targets in Iran and didn't provide the tanker support, and the US remains committed to a diplomatic resolution to Iran nuclear issue. However, at the same time, it has said, it has once again repeated what President Donald Trump had been saying, that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. We've also seen Pakistan has condemned Israeli unilateral and illegal strikes in Iran, also through the statement by the Foreign Office of Pakistan, as well as through its envoy at the United Nations during that particular Security Council meeting. We've also seen Iranian side saying that we have well documented solid evidence of the support provided by American forces in the region and their basis for the military attacks of the Zionist regime, unquote. This was said by Iranian Foreign Minister Mr. Abbas Araghchi. Let me bring in our esteemed panel of guests who are joining us both in studio as well as online to discuss this particular developing situation in the Middle East. In the studio, we are honored to be joined by Professor Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal, Foreign Affairs expert. Dr. Jaspal, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Rear Admiral, retired Faisal Shah, senior analyst. Admiral Shah, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On the video link at the same time, we are honored to be joined by Mr. Raza Bashir Tarar, former ambassador. Mr. Tarar, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Jaspal, before heading into the various aspects, lots of statements, lots of engagements are happening as this particular crisis unfolding. It has entered already into the fourth day. The Israeli illegal strikes and then counter strikes by Iran. We've seen the damage happening on both the sides. But at this particular point in time, where do you see the scale and the level of the conflict between the two?
I think that this conflict has taken its own dynamics. And those dynamics are dictating the situation. Israel initiated, and naturally Iranians have no option, either submit or retaliate, and they prefer to retaliate. And in either case, they were having a challenge. So by this way, now we are seeing that Iranian strikes are also hitting the targets, according to satellites, certain Israeli claims, and the way the Israelis are now, you can say, seems very much angered and confused. So that indicates that the recent strikes of the Iranians hit the targets. The alarming factor is that the conflict is escalating horizontally. Vertically, I cannot say, because the same weapons they are using in the last 4 days. Horizontally means that now the civilians or the main city or residential areas, they will be targeted, or they are targeted already. This conflict will further increase the anger in both societies. But of course, which in the intro you very rightly pointed out and referred to number of the nations which supported the Iranian stance, and at the same time demanded immediate, you can say, de-escalation. But the trends are indicating that this de-escalation may be difficult in the near future. It is already Israelis claimed, I mean Netanyahu, that they are going to prolong the war. But they are failing to realize Iran has equal capacity to prolong. And in this context, Israel has an advantage of the Western allies, logistical supplies, technological material, especially United States. And also United States, Britain and the other countries are providing it a defensive shield. Iran lacks this, but we have to not forget Iran has also constituted strategic partnership with Russia, with China. And at this stage, I think Pakistan, at least politically and diplomatically, very openly supporting the Iran. So Iran is very much safe from our side, and that will be going to add more. It is, I have also came across that Iranians have been successful in unearthing the spies network within their country, because they sentenced a few of them. And if they are successful in this context, definitely situation will be further changed.
Dr. Jaspal, you already mentioned of whether there were two choices for Iran, whether to submit or to retaliate, and this time they preferred to retaliate. Was the other choice even equally practical, even they wouldn't have retaliated? I wouldn't be using that they would have submitted to it. Was submitting a choice for them at this point?
There was a choice available to the Iranians, but the repercussions of the both are the same. Because what are their demands? The Americans and the especially Israelis' demand is rollbacking the Iran's uranium enrichment. I think Iranians were prepared for that. In the 6th round talks, they were going to admit something 3.5 up to level. And Americans have also given the indication that for the time being, let's settle it. Second, their focus was on Iran's ballistic missiles, which was a basically irritant between the Iranians and Israelis or the others, between Israelis and their allies. So they targeted it. But the most important irritant for them is, especially for the Israelis, is the regime. What he was saying, or what he has been claiming, regime change. So if they submit, again regime change, again these things have been given up. If they do not submit, again the same thing. So it's better, Iranians I think prefer to retaliate and establish that we have a courage to hit back. Second is that in this entire scenario, in a few years, Israel hegemony have been gradually started establishing in the neighborhood. Iran was opposing, and internationally we are opposing its legitimate existence. So definitely, if Iran submit within the Middle Eastern setup, its hegemony was established. But now it isn't. But this time there is a very interesting thing that even the Gulf or GCC countries, they opposed the military action against Iran. They were saying that it will unleash the process which will be going to destabilize the entire region. The good news for us is at least Iranians have realized that within their society, this raw network which was have been sold to the Israelis, Mossad, that must be eliminated, which is a good news for Pakistan.
I'll come back to that particular point also. Admiral Shah, your understanding so far how this particular conflict has unfolded, and what's your understanding regarding was submitting a choice with the Iranians this time around?
I think the demands of America and Israel were unrealistic as far as Iran was concerned, and I think as far as any other country would have been concerned. They wanted 0% fissile material and rollback of ballistic missile program. I think for a country like Iran, which has an existential threat from Israel, it was not possible to agree to that. Okay, Iran said that they were never going to have nuclear weapons. And they wanted this enrichment capability for their peaceful nuclear
And
use.
that is also a certain
3%,
limitation.
up to 3%. The problem is that if you are able to enrich even up to 1 or 2%, you can actually enhance enrichment to the weapon grade. You have that capability. It's only the cap that you put on your enrichment. So that is what was feared by Israel, that if they retain this capability even up to 1%, 2% or 3%, it would sometime give them leverage to enhance that capability.
Admiral Shah, let me get a clarity regarding this particular point. Wasn't that particular cap or the limit agreed to by Iranians in JCPOA?
It was.
The first nuclear
It was,
deal?
and it was testified also. It was several times inspected by IAEA also, and they rendered their report accepting that Iran was in compliance of JCPOA. Despite that, in 2018, America retreated itself from the treaty. So, because at that time President Trump wanted Iranian ballistic missile to be included in JCPOA also. So now again the demand is same, and that was unrealistic for Iran to accept, because for its defense it needs that. Now, if you talk of Mr. Netanyahu, he has been a failure. Just go back and see what were his two stated objectives vis-a-vis Hamas. To free all the hostages and to completely destroy Hamas. And he failed in both. He has opened another front, and so far he has not been able, he has not been successful to an extent he wanted. So he wants to prolong it, and he wants to drag America in that. The success of Iran is that Iran is not only fighting against Israel, it is fighting against a coalition of forces. And in that fight, Iran, being a country under sanctions for decades, has been able to push Israel to an extent where it is requesting US to come into play. So I think that's a success on part of Iran. It is the only country in the world which has militarily challenged Israel, and not only militarily challenged, but has actually gone into war with Israel.
Right, I'll come back to you to understand the current position, as you are of the view that Israel is trying to drag or request US to become the part of this particular conflict directly. So in that particular regard, what are the choices that are resting with the US authorities? Let me proceed towards Mr. Tarar. Isn't it surprising that this particular unilateral strike comes on the part of Israelis within Iran amid those nuclear negotiations that were underway between the US and Iran? I think we've lost the connection with Mr. Tarar. We'll try to reconnect with him. As soon as we get into connection with him, we'll go back to him. Dr. Jaspal, it was Iran which agreed to that very limit or the cap regarding the uranium enrichment. So what led the US to pull off during Trump's administration from that particular deal?
In Trump's first administration or previous administration, Trump has three things. He used, from the very beginning in his election campaign, he said in 2016 that this JCPOA deal was a bad deal. And then he elaborated this deal was a bad deal because it failed to include ballistic missiles of the Iranians' capability, capping that which Admiral Shah very rightly pointed out. But at the same time, his basic demand was the reining in of the Iranians' influence in the region. Basically, he was talking about the axis of resistance. So he demanded that the deal was not going to curtail his influence. Then he exited from the deal. When he exited from the deal, it was counterproductive because Iranians were free. They were doing, the deal was very much, you can say, honored by the Iranians and the others. Even the European members of the deal, Chinese and Russians, requested the Trump administration that they shall, that at that time it avoid the withdrawal clause and not use the withdrawal clause or leave the. But anyway, it left, and Iranians had a right to go for a full fuel cycle for a civilian use. But in this context, things started moving ahead. A number of the indications are that Iranian reached up to the 60% enrichment, and from 60 to 90%, very short time, but 60% qualified to be referred at a highly enriched uranium. And if you go for the first generation of the nuclear weapon, which was used against the Hiroshima, it was a uranium, having a uranium fissile material, but the weapon model was not tested. So you have now, Iranians have some kind of rudimentary, non-tested nuclear device capability, which Israelis knows it. But now here is a question that when they are attacking on the nuclear installations, are with the attack on the nuclear installations or killing a few scientists, they will be able to cap? No, they are unable to cap. Yes, they can threaten, they can change the regime, and regime itself. Till the time Iranians are not prepared themselves to roll back their nuclear program, no one can take away. The reason is very simple. They have a big manpower in this program, which is, you can say, generations, and there's a big manpower. So by eliminating a few, it doesn't work. Second, these facilities are underground, and they are very much what you call it covered by the, and you need a special bunker busters, which Israel does not possess. And the third is, which is more alarming, hitting a nuclear facility is first time. You can say Israel hit the Iraqi in 1981, but that they were trying to build. It was, you can say, in its formative phase, or just infrastructure started and they eliminated. But a functional facility like Netshed, like Firdova, like these kind of things, if they hit, and even if there is a research reactor, and if it will be going to melt, it will create a havoc of the radiation. And if in a retaliation Israeli nuclear power plant is hit, it will be just like a Chernobyl, like a Fukushima, Daiichi Fukushima. Israelis are failing. If they are just making a more rhetoric to hit these facilities, or if they are hitting those facilities, they are exposing or making the entire region vulnerable to nuclear radiation. This is a challenge, which is challenge for us, which is challenge for the Gulf, which is a challenge for everyone who is in the neighborhood of the Iran. So we have to, and that's not only we, on Friday when there was an emergency meeting, Grossi, who is a chairman, director general of International Atomic Energy Agency, or a watchdog of this, IAEA, and he alarmed the members, and that be careful. This is the first time that a state is deliberately striking on the nuclear facilities. Is a person is a mad? Yes, Netanyahu is a mad. Why? This is a big question. He's a mad because since 2023, within the Israel, there's a demand of elections. He was saved from the election because of the October, and then this prolonged war. Now, if he did not start this, you can say, recent war, then he was going to face an election. Within the election, he lacks the majority because his problem in this context is that he don't have a other option. The only in a proportional representation, a radicalized small parties are on his side, and that's why he wanted to maintain that kind of a thing. A general election or a peace in Israel or in the region will be inviting the Israeli Supreme Court, which is also against entire of his policies. So there is a domestic compulsion, or he's using the war, killing of the innocent people, and exaggerating the threat of the Iran's nuclear program, as earlier my colleague pointed out. Even again, they repeated this fatwa that weapons of mass destruction are not permitted. And ironically, same fatwa you will come from the Judah. So that's why it's a different situation, and very ironical, disturbing, and alarming.
Right. Let me once again proceed to Mr. Raza Bashir Tarar, former ambassador. Mr. Tarar, thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Tarar, is it surprising for you that this particular unilateral aggression on part of Israelis come at a time when the negotiations were underway between the US and Iran?
Well, certainly it's very baffling, because on the one hand, negotiations are underway, and then the Israelis go ahead and do something extremely nonsensical. And basically, there must be some calculus somewhere in the devious mind of Netanyahu. But I think it's a very defective one. And as my very learned co-panelists have pointed out, there are obviously unintended consequences. And a very great one, obviously, is leakage of radiation and so on and so forth. Now, some might opine that maybe Netanyahu did it to, strengthen the negotiating hand of people who are talking to Iran, and maybe, Iran will be left with nothing to bargain with, and then they'll capitulate. But that is not likely. And whatever has been started has to be doused and put out very, very quickly. If the US is dragged...
So what are the chances at this particular point in time? We have seen very strong worded statements, and also Israelis saying that they did not act recklessly, rather their strikes were preventive. We've also seen a statement coming from Netanyahu saying that the Israeli strikes on Iranian infrastructure has set its nuclear program back years. Also that we will hit every site and every target of the Ayatollah's regime, and what they have felt so far is nothing compared with what they will be handed in the coming days. We've also seen the Iranian armed forces have also issued a warning, their spokesperson saying warnings for you in the coming days, leave the occupied territories because certainly they won't be inhabitable in the future. So do you think this situation de-escalating anytime soon, in a day or two, or in a few days from now?
Well, sir, I think the key, quite frankly, is with the White House. And I think the US has to put its foot down. They cannot have their cake and eat it too. They cannot pretend to be restraining Netanyahu while at the same time doing things which are basically encouraging him. I don't think Israelis have the wherewithal to get into an extended conflict. And if this thing prolongs, it's going to be disastrous, obviously, for the US economy as well. It's going to jack up the fuel prices, and there will be obviously more resentment and hatred against the US as well. So I think time is of the essence. If it doesn't work, then obviously we have seen in the case of Iraq, we have seen in the case of Afghanistan, that invasion is easy, initial attacks are easy, and then something, when it gets drawn out, it has, causes a lot of harm. So my hope, again, I really don't have any, crystal ball with which to predict the behavior of somebody who defies basically rules of sanity. But let's all pray and hope that sanity prevails, because this is not going to be good for anybody. If there is a nuclear meltdown or whatever, nobody is going to benefit from it. So let's hope it is controlled.
Right. Okay. So, Mr. Tarar, do you think, was it surprising for the Israeli regime as Iran resorted to the retaliatory strikes? Was there an element of surprise, or were they expecting the similar sort of response from the Iranian side?
Well, definitely they should have factored it in. Iranians have, a tradition of resistance. They are a proud nation. It's an ideological country, and with considerable muscle. Maybe they don't have as many toys as the Israelis, but they have a certain determination. They have a worldview, and but at the same time, they are reasonable people. They were trying to talk it out. They have not committed any aggression. They are signatories to the NPT and so on and so forth. So I think the Israelis should definitely have known. Maybe they felt that there's going to be such a decapitation effect by killing certain important personalities and damaging certain facilities, that probably the Iranians will be down on their knees. But I don't see that happening, and that is basically the variable which probably they didn't take into account, or maybe they did take into account and still exhibited foolhardiness and sort of rushed in, you know where angels fail to tread. Yeah.
Right, Admiral Shah. We've also seen statements from the Iranian top leadership that if Israel halts their strikes, will also stop our response, right? Given that particular fact, as Mr. Tarar also alluded to the fact that Iranians are a reasonable and responsible nation, and if uh, this is stopped on the part of Israelis, they will definitely consider that. Now, keeping in view, were Israelis actually surprised with this level of response on the part of Iranians in retaliatory measures? And if they continue, do you think uh, this particular retaliation will also continue and would at a certain point push Iran to stop its aggression?
I think Israelis were surprised on two accounts. Their assessment was that there won't be a response just as what Iran has responded like. And secondly, that in the initial stages of the war, uh, America would side with Israel overtly,
Right.
openly. So both things did not happen. Iranians responded, and they responded with full might. And now you see that although the first attack of Israel was quite devastating, but thereafter Iranians have also scored some uh, gains in attacking Israel. So, and America has not entered as yet. And it says that it does not have any plan until unless it is attacked by Iran. Iran is not going to attack US bases or US interest in the region, perhaps. So, Iranians have gained uh, a considerable good ground as of now. That's why they are saying that if Israel stops here, they would also consider halting it. Why? Because they want to go back to the negotiation table with some strength, with some position, good position. Otherwise, they will have to succumb to the demands of US and Israel that were earlier put to Iran. So they now feel that we are at a position where we have also shown our response, we have also shown our might, and it has also caused considerable damage to Israel in different cities. The people are harassed over there, their leadership is under the bunkers. So this is the time, if it stops, we will have a good position to go to the table and talk and find some middle position. So I think if it continues, the response from Iran will also continue till the time till the time I mean Iran will continue it to keep attaining the position of strength from their point of view, so that when they go to the table, they should have something in their kitty also.
Okay, I want you to understand regarding as to when these functional nuclear sites are being targeted, were targeted by Israel. In Iran, we've also seen that statement by the Iranian envoy in the UN. The damage to such sites could release catastrophic radiological consequences across the region and beyond. We've also seen the IAEA Director General, Mr. Rafael Grossi, also speaking at that particular emergency meeting, is also offered his good offices to allow both the sides to come to the negotiations and resolve this particular issue through negotiations. Now, the after effects of hitting such functional nuclear sites, who is going to be held accountable for that, and who is going to hold that aggressor to the account? Is there any sort of a mechanism? Because of course it is going to expose not only Iranians but the entire region to this particular catastrophic effect.
As per UN Charter, these are not allowed. Attack on nuclear sites is not allowed. But unfortunately, you don't find any international system functioning at this point in time in the world. You see different conflicts around the world. Where has been this international system? Where has been this people who back humanity? In Gaza, you see. In Kashmir, you see. In Russia-Ukraine war, you see. I mean, there is no international system that can put anybody accountable, that can hold this happening more. It depends on both of them to realize that what they are doing is not in interest of anybody in the region, including both of them. So that's a wrong precedent that they are setting, and they should refrain from that. And unfortunately, this precedent has been initiated and set by Israel. So if it continues, it is going to have catastrophic effects, not only in the region, but I think around the world also, because a wrong precedent would be set. And if world or international system doesn't come to halt it right now, it will fail forever.
Right, Dr. Jaspal, I'll come back to you. Mr. Tarar has to leave a little earlier. I'll proceed once again towards Mr. Tarar. Mr. Tarar, now the US State Department says that the US remains committed to a diplomatic resolution to the Iran nuclear issue. You already were of the view the key to the de-escalation of the current conflict lies with the White House. At this particular point in time, by looking at this statement, on one side, the US doesn't want Iran to have the nuclear weapons. The negotiations regarding nuclear issue was already underway. We've also seen this particular statement, US remains committed to a diplomatic resolution to the Iran nuclear issue. Now, the overall impact of this particular crisis on those negotiations, of course, they've been cancelled for now. How soon do you think they could be resumed? What needs to be done when it comes to the US role and responsibility, first to de-escalate and then perhaps to enter those negotiations once again to resolve that nuclear issue with Iran?
Well, sir, I think the US would have to take Iranian concerns into account. If the purpose is to basically bring Iran down to its knees and have it begging for mercy, that's not going to happen. So obviously they have to find a way, a dignified way, which also puts Iran at ease and also makes them realize that if they make extremely major concessions, that will not make them vulnerable to future aggression and to tinkering with their system and this unwanted interference that they have been suffering on various fronts. I personally have a feeling that when the West generally and certain countries particularly, they look at Iran, there is a certain presumption of guilt, and there is kind of a subliminal desire to somehow get rid of the so-called, as they like to term it, the regime, and bring about a systemic change and so on and so forth. They must realize if that is going to that has to happen, it has to be, the impulse has to come from within. This engineering, even in the past, there's a long history of Western interference in Iran. It has not, turned out very well for the region and for the world at large. So I think Iranians will need a lot of reassurance. And we also have to realize that there's a larger question of, not basically of making countries realize that if they make any compromise, that does not mean that they are going to be, subject to naked aggression anytime. So Iran, I think, has proven its bona fides. It has, participated in negotiations. They could have just gone nuclear a long time ago, are fashioned as the Western alarmists like to tell us, dirty bombs or something like that. They have done nothing of the sort. So I think this is something that should be appreciated. But at the same time, if the idea is to make them beg and capitulate, that will not happen, and everybody should realize that that is not a desirable goal. Thank you.
Right, Mr. Raza Bashir Tarar, former ambassador, joining us on the video link. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Dr. Jaspal, now Iranian Foreign Minister Mr. Abbas Araghchi says we have well documented solid evidence of the support provided by American forces in the region and the basis for the military attacks of the Zionist regime. And the Iranians, with this particular thing, say that America is complicit in this particular unilateral and illegal aggression by Israelis. Do you think even if US tries to play any sort of role at this particular point in time to impress upon Israelis to de-escalate the situation, do you think there would be this similar sort of a trust level it might enjoy from the Iranian side as far as resumption of nuclear negotiations are concerned?
I think that one thing is very clear, crystal clear. Without the Americans' tacit approval, Israelis were not crossing the red line. Second, Israelis knew Iranians have a potential or a missiles potential, and they are not able to defend them. And during this, even first day, the America, when they retaliated and then follow up, the American aircraft carrier is intercepting from the, you can say, Gulf. American bases are operative in the Iraq to intercept the Iranian missiles, including the Jordan. Now here, it's an established fact. You cannot provide a foolproof, you can say, shield against ballistic missiles.
Right.
And that's why some percentage of Iranians missiles are reaching at or hitting at the target. This is the first thing. Iranians are very clear, but what is the Israelis' demand is that in that reaction, maybe Iranians can hit the American sites. They are not hitting. They are only focusing on the Israel. And second is that what the Iranians desire, they desire a dialogue. Through a dialogue, Iranians can get something. And they diplomatically, again, you can say, win the hearts of the international community when they said that we are waiting. Israel started, Israel must stop.
Right.
And then we will go for a table talk.
Right, Dr. Jaspal, the kind of statements we've seen from Russians as well as from the Chinese side, is there any sort of a substantial role at this particular critical
There is
juncture?
a substantial role, because when the Russian made a statement and Putin, Trump has agreed that Putin shall play, the Europeans, you can say, were disturbed. So they criticized that Putin have nothing to do. He does not enjoy any trust of the you say Israelis, because he has a strategic partnership with the Iran. But at this context, everyone knows Americans have a more than a strategic partnership with Israel. But of course, Iranians are willing for a dialogue because they realizes that this war of attrition is not in their interest. But at the same time, if somebody is thinking that what Israel did in 1981, it set a precedent. You asked the earlier question, it's the only Israel in the world which hit a nuclear facility which was under construction under the IEA safeguard in 1981 in Iraq, and there was no reaction from the international community. So it has some kind of established norm, might is right. Now in this context, when they attack on Iran, Iran had a potential, it retaliated. Unlike when they attack on the Syria, Syria did not retaliate. So Israelis are habitual attacking on the others' facilities, but the first time they have found state-on-state war has a consequences or repercussions, and they are facing sooner or later. Of course, both sides will be going to celebrate. We achieved our objective. We done this. This is a paradoxical sort of situation for a negotiation. I think Iranians are diplomatically playing their cards very well. They went to the UN Security Council knowingly that nothing is going to happen. They are saying that we are still ready for a continuity of the dialogue, but at the same time, they are knowing the Americans will have a different take. But even before, they were in a dialogue.
Right. Admiral Shah, your quicker closing comment regarding as to the role Russia or China could play at this particular point in time, and how effective do you think that
Russia
could be?
and China would like to put their weight behind political and diplomatic domains. But if we think that they are going to help Iran militarily, I think that's not going to happen, because on the other side, it's America is standing in front of them, and that's going to turn it into a wider scale war. So they are going to put their weight diplomatically.
And you're Professor Dr. Zafar Nawaz, Jaspal, foreign affairs expert. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Mr. Admiral retired Faisal Shah, senior analyst. Mr. Shah, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourself.